few poems, and I'll probably just throw some on the floor as I realize that when I read them to people, they're actually longer than when I read them to myself. So let us begin. This first poem is called Autumn, and it's about how, like, I don't know, it's about a lot of things, but it's also, I'm already throwing something. Told you. It's about how sometimes the calendar doesn't seem to match up with the temperature and the way it feels. And that's sort of what I like about the seasons, is that they're not right, because I'm not right. So Autumn, it's in two parts, and I'll just kind of go like this when it's the second part. So 1, it is summer on the blanket where we sung, thumbing through the sculptures of Greek gods above Baptist Library's perfectly manicured green. The yellow flame arches the blue backdrop of days. Yet the calendar doesn't know this, doesn't care. It says it is September, so it is September, the 4th Saturday in September. The calendar claims it's autumn, that winter is creeping into the fingers of trees, paralyzing branches with debilitating arthritis, so that they can no longer grasp glory. But we know better than that on our Estival, where summer blooms eternal. I flit past the statue that might be Dionysus. You point to Nike, and the wine moon will wait. We will harvest this moment of fervent eyes to keep our hearts simmer through the long winters of life. And each time this is read, I will be 22 and you 21, each of us smoking Camels, your cell phone ringing with your soon-to-be ex-boyfriend on the other end, frantically trying to hold on to you, to keep the relationship afloat, although it's sinking like a statue in the Mediterranean that will never be recovered, not in 2,000 years. Which we both silently acknowledge with smiles and nods as you raise your finger to your lips to shush me, and I am glad I don't have a cell phone, as you claim you're somewhere where you are not, and stop my hand at your favorite Nike in relief, buckling her sandal, her head gone, her loose robes alternately furrowed and smooth, clinging to her breasts, her nipples erect, as she prepares to bolt. Our eyes meet in near ecstasy as you pucker your lips and exhale before you say goodbye to him for the second to last time. And like two thieves, having raided the crypt of the past to seize the spoils that never spoil, we carry off our treasure in storehouses to which this alone is the key. So, this is called Hand Grenade Heart. I don't know. I mean, I had to write this poem because my first manuscript of poems was called Hand Grenade Heart, and I knew I was going to write a poem called Hand Grenade Heart, and this is the poem that I knew I had to write, so I wrote it. 1. The depth charge of infatuation sunk romantically in blue silence. The subliminal love machine in its forward motion, the Miriam moment, before the explosion of red alert. 2. She embraced the handle with purpose, slipped her fingers through the ring and pulled the pin. 3. The deserter was in love with the feat. She went AWOL, threw it as far as she could, knowing the concussion of affect could just as easily be her own. 4. The fleshy pieces of pineapple refused to ripen beneath the steel shell of certain depth, clinging to the soil soul of artillery arteries. Protected by the green barbed wire foliage, it rolled to a soft thud. Tangled in the booby-trapped phone calls, we cut our way through enemy lines with our weapons of deception. Your too late apologies and brutal truth, my endless details of casualties. This is called A Letter from Purgatory, and I think these poems are why I love Samuel Beckett's writing so much. I don't know, I just like this idea of like being stuck, and I don't know, that's all I'm willing to tell you about that. A Letter from Purgatory. Nothing here is bad per se. Nothing changes. The crows perch on the drizzly branches when I step outside. They clamor in circles above my head, residuate themselves upon their respective posts, as if their feet were tied there. And in the only miracle allowed in this place, the strings never tangle. The ever-faithful geese returning in articulate arrows are never returning. It is always midnight. I can never sleep. And the cigarette I light between my lips shivers because it is always one of two left. The cable is out, the VCR broken, and I don't own a DVD player. The sleeping pills. I've already taken them today. Today is today is today is today. Will always be today. Tomorrow will not come. Neither tomorrow nor the next day, nor even the day after that. It will always be today. Even in Australia, they're stuck in this moment. Although it's tomorrow there, they make no progress. Monotony drags on. I need a glass for whiskey, wash the dishes by hand, dry them with a towel, because there is no time to drip dry, and gravity is a memory as vague and tiny as the concept of another's voice. Here where there is nothing, no one, and only space to wait in, there is no time except to say, it is midnight. It always has been, and it always will. So this one's like, it's almost the same poem, right? It's called Nuit Blanche. I dropped my phone. But it's still going. Okay. So a sleepless night en français. Everything blooms gray in this desert of dream. March the dusty craters de la lune till they undulate cobalt blue. Then pace from bow to stern of mine, seesaw in hope of capsizing, to silence the signaling or non-signaling frantic fingers of SOS. There is no moon tonight. The stars, little gold nugget liars, dangling from fishing strings suspended below what I cannot see, always an inch from my grasp, when I jump as high as I'm allowed, and return with a start to feeling's flatness. Head hung over the safety rail, pondering the depths of darkness, mammoth black manta rays break the surface with subconscious screaming, in a language I shouldn't understand but do. I sprinkle periwinkle pills into the subliminal sea, and the voices vanish in the inky black wash of the lake. So this poem's about the brain and how weird it is, and how you can be lost going to some place you've been like a bunch of times. You just go from a slightly different way and your brain doesn't work right. And so it sort of starts off with me trying to remember something and not knowing it. I don't know, it does some things. I hope it does some good things. It's called The Geography of a Brain. I'd pulled over to the side of the road in front of a high school I'd never attended that reminded me of an elementary school from a movie that had never been filmed. To search Spotify for a Dominic Doyle song, which was actually a Martina Sobri's song, and drove away with Sarah Harmer singing Things to Forget through my car speakers. The song held no meaning for me when it began, which reminded me of 24 of her songs that did, and of the places each invoked. The place I was in was lost. The first snow was clinging to the bald cornfields when I made an illegal left turn headed north on Route 31. Molly was stuck between both front seats looking forward like a hairy sphinx. The sun was almost set. The western sky, amber, amethyst, magenta, and ruby, was stolen from Jim Carroll's brains. The eastern sky, powder blue, burgeoning, to black, without ever conquering contrast, was like the blanket of a baby boy falling asleep who would never be born. Overhead, a broken arrowhead of Canadian geese flew south while half asleep, which reminded me of the poem I had written and another which I had failed to write, which in turn reminded me of all my failures and all my successes. The two competing colors were doing their best not to collide, combine, confuse, or transfuse themselves, but were quickly unable to tell themselves apart as they shook hands and invited each inside for tea. Every so often the song dropped out for the GPS of my phone to drone directions to the ShopRite I had been to 100 times, but I couldn't quite seem to get to from where I was coming. All of this aroused an old feeling in a new way, like a deja vu, as distinct as a first kiss and your car wrapped around a telephone pole, and the snow falling through the smashed windshield on bloody hands still clutching the wheel. And suddenly the song and the geese and the three skies, and the road I was on, and the roads I had taken, and the roads I should have taken, and the roads I will have taken, and I were one. And the fourth sky, which had yet to reveal itself, and the me who I had yet to become were one too. And all those differences were not differences at all, and were all one. And we all knew we were one. Even of those of us who had yet to exist were blessed with the present pre-existence, which neither science nor history nor literary criticism, nor the song nor myself would reveal how or what that means. Instead, we were all to hum along, subconsciously and subaudibly, to what we knew and would know, knowing there is knowing and knowing there is not knowing, and knowing the difference between the three. A point in a pie, the place where they collide, combine, confuse, and transfuse. The geography of the brain that knows it cannot know itself, but only about itself, yet that does not stop itself from enjoying getting lost in the gray recesses of its own wrinkles, in and out of its own mind. Billy's got a big smile on his face. All right, a few more. Frustrated. This is a poem about going to see Monet exhibit, and there were all these different paintings from different private collections, and this one that was I really liked. I could not see it because there was a red velvet rope and there was glass over it, and so you kept getting a glare wherever you went, or a reflection. And somehow that turned into this, and it's called Frustrating. I've got finished dreams somewhere, like silk sheets hanging up to dry behind a white picket fence, the sun shining on chlorophyll ambitions that grow and grow and grow and grow, even when a jealous wind kicks them down to the ship mud and they scurry through the alligator-pissed plains like lily pads searching for the morning blossom, dew glistening on its petals, Monet behind glass, my hand reaching over the red velvet rope, do not touch, bolted to the wall, the avant-gardes encroaching from every angle, turning me away, but with every step I'm embedded further in the scene. This is a really old poem that I'm going to read. I don't know, it's probably just a Wallace Stevens imitation in a way. It's called Second Thoughts on Significance. It's in parts. It's just sort of images. Second Thoughts on Significance, Wihayo Omudo, which is just me being clever because it's clearly for a Korean girl, and Wihayo Omudo means for nobody in Korean. I can't help myself. Her footsteps in the opening door, ellipsis in her eyes, rain in her hair, umbrella in her hand, drenched in thought. She passes past, paces past, passing. Do you want to sit down? Slowly, a smile. Without asking, her jade hands raise my teacup up to her lips, sip peace tea and descend. Pink lipstick on the edge of a teacup, two intersecting circles of green tea on a coffee table. She folds my leather collar back flat, her hands on my shoulders in evening fog, her lips looking at my lips. Whiskey sour and a Johnny Walker black, a lighter paints two faces the same hues. Whiskey sour and a Johnny Walker black, the same? The same? Two bodies lean towards an arch, like the legs of an A. What do you say? Maybe in a week or two, maybe when things are different for me. Maybe when things are different for you. Oh. 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 Waves of brass nicotine swirl, second thoughts on significance, insignificant, other arpeggios of a muted trumpet. Take 5. Yellow cab at 2 a.m. Freeman, red numerals, 4.25. Hamilton's face, keep it. A bleach-soaked towel wipes a coffee table clean. A glass ashtray empties. 20 Parliament lights, 20 Marlboro Reds. Unlocked door, turned, closed, locked. Unlocked door, closed, turned, locked. A cigarette glows above a porch. Shopping cart wheels squeak down a side street. 1 Marlboro Red falling into a puddle of wet leaves. The sigh of an ember extinguished. 1 pair of brown shoes kicked off in 2 different directions. A single body falls face down into sleep. Wakes, sleeps, wakes. 5 chalky blue cylinders. N, 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 N. The sound of a faucet. The clink of an empty glass in a sink full of dishes. A string quartet of limbs collapsing into sleep. Z, 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 Z. All right, 2 more. This one is from school and how, I guess, I just hated graduate school so very, very much. And I called it So Long and Thanks for All the Fish, which is a Douglas Adams book from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, because it seemed like that's what I wanted to say when I graduated. So long and thanks for all the little, here you go, good puppy, you know? And it's stolen, some of the line, always bow, the bauds of euphony is stolen from, straight from Wallace Stevens, 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird. Always bow to the bauds of euphony. Kiss the glass rings of their PhDs. Praise the imaginative connections of their last critical texts. Never acknowledge your own ignorance. Their arrogance already assumes it. And always bow to the bauds of euphony. Always bow to the bauds of euphony. Remember the point of their pointless digressions. Do not remind them with insurrection of their indirections. When they forget their destinations, just wave them into the station, and always bow to the bauds of euphony. Always bow to the bauds of euphony, smile at their heaped-up analogies, as if they were the height of poetry, and not the heap of dung without lotus, the endless sea of eyes of not one iota. Never sin by questioning their motives, and always bow to the bauds of euphony. Always bow to the bauds of euphony, even the euphanizers do, in their company. When the bauds are because the bauds are the custodians of our history. They'll disembowel your vowels with consonant upheaval. They'll plunge out the meaning and knock down your weebles. They'll have you excommunicated, an enemy of the academia, if you do not bow to the bauds of euphony. If you do not bow to the bauds of euphony. And there's actually a whole bunch of these poems about me hating graduate school. Or they just snuck into poems that weren't even really about that. But this is called Sex in the Library, or Comparative Intercourse. And it's sort of one part about that, and it's also, somebody told me that you have to get 3 students to get a study room in the library because people kept having sex in the library. If there were 2 people who could do that. And then it's also this idea of the libraries burning down. And I always feel like, thank God the old libraries burned down, because what else would we write about? It would have really all been said by now. So it's sort of a combination of these 3 things. So sex in the library, or comparative intercourse. The upperclassmen and bougie professors, men and or women of leisure, recline on unclean couches, questioning kisses, like stapled stacks of ungraded papers, grasping at flesh like a lint remover, never pressing hard enough to arouse the pulse of pleasure, merely tracing the contours of reoccurring power structures. Illiterate underclassmen occupy spaces bolted in oblivion, muffle their moans between bit lips, hide themselves behind wood and stone, hiking skirts and shirts, pulling down pants just far enough to expose flashes of sex, squatting in unused reading rooms beneath barren desks, blank pages and absent classes, aware of evil without knowing it, or good. But you and I, two people who appreciate the written and unwritten words of the world, connoisseurs of literature, the subtext of sex and text, engorged with the fleshing and conflict of characters, drop our leaves and unbind desire between the canon centuries of couplings. Right and wrong sing their song and swirl around us in an orgy of unfrustrated intertextuality, chanting in a chorus of tantric verse, speaking in licks of fire and smoke of breath, knocking over a shelf here or movement there, an entire language where, until perched high upon a heap of history's bindings, past and future arch their backs in a present gasp, eruption and destruction, the whole human race's heart burning and beating and pounding and yearning for the propagation of something new, a need whose purpose could only be satiated by the couplings of two disparate forms and the death of another. It was, after all, us, and not Caesar's ships that burnt Alexandria to the ground.